My definition of success is embracing like the hustle and grind for whatever it is your goal is. It's interesting because actually her son reached out to me and it's like, dude, what was that book?
Yeah.
Because I think it really is very helpful. Like when you're the one person in your business, so she's the chef, she's the CEO, she's the bookkeeper, she's doing everything,
Right.
It's not really sustainable, like for a very long time,
Nope. And I'm going through some serious growing pains, and because of how entrenched I am day to day, it's hard.
No,
dude,
same here.
It's
man.
hard to scale,
dude.
When
totally.
you're, and I think like scale is a relative term, right? Everyone wants to be the next Uber,
right?
But
yeah, right.
Your business is your business, and
totally,
so it's gonna scale in its own natural kind of way.
Are we good? We're rolling. Welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. I couldn't be more excited to have Shahzad Qureshi here, who, interestingly enough, we met sort of through Instagram. I was getting a protein shake at Lifetime in Syosset,
right.
and Shahzad was gracious enough to come up to me and introduce himself. He'd been following me on social media, and I was really touched, man, by the things you said.
Oh, thank you.
It's always cool when the things you do move people, and I'm almost getting a little emotional because it's like that's why I do this shit,
Yeah.
I really appreciated that. And then we connected. You gave me your card, and I checked out some of your stuff on social media, and you are a fucking hustler, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I checked out your vlog, and you're a tremendous real estate developer. You're the founder, the owner of the Pinnacle Real Estate Consulting, I believe is the name of your company.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing it all. So I'm super excited to have you here, man.
Thank you very much for having me. And I truly meant the things that I said, and what really resonated with me the most, and it's kind of what I'm going through right now with social media, is you started this effort with nothing, no expectations in return. And you're just putting out this content on a weekly basis. And that's sort of how I feel about this. It's not something that's going to contribute to my bottom line, but in the long term, it's something that perhaps could, and in the interim, it's something that allows me to kind of share and give back and sort of kind of save people from some of the pitfalls that I've been, sort of subjected to. And there's been quite a few.
Yeah,
the best teacher's experience, as they say. So
it's the story of any business.
Yeah.
Every business is different, but there's so many parallels, and the Venn diagram of business, that middle part of it is so huge. Just managing finances and coming up with ideas and executing and dealing with subcontractors and employees and all that stuff. Those are all shared things that every business owner has to conquer in order to have success.
Absolutely.
And that leads me to the one thing I asked you to prepare. So one of the themes in this podcast is everyone that I interview is successful in their own way. And, ultimately what I'm finding is that definition of success, it ultimately boils down to the same sort of elements.
Right.
But I always like to get someone's spin on what their own personal definition of success is. So Shahzad, why don't you share with us what success means to you, man?
Sure. And that's a great way to start. So for me personally, success is something that I don't think I've attained yet. Success will come for me personally when I'm able to get out of the 12-hour a day grind and start to give back in some capacity. My goal ultimately is to keep building, but as a passion, not as a necessity, and generate some residual income through what I love, which is single family homes, rental income. There's really not a whole lot of multifamily homes around here. This is where I grew up, kind of like the town of Oyster Bay area. So you're going to find that the majority of the homes here are single family homes. So my idea of success, and I'm sure this definition is going to change over the years, is going to be when I can sort of let off the gas pedal in some ways and start to actually physically put myself out there in a way where I can start to give back. And whether it's through encouraging other young people like myself or helping the people that really truly need our help. And it's just amazing to me, and this is something that I follow, geopolitical kind of like stuff, and it's amazing how many people lack basic necessities, and that's something that unfortunately up to this point I've been just head down pile driving through this struggle of being an entrepreneur. But 8-9 years in, I've hit certain targets and done certain things that I really didn't think were possible. But I still haven't been able to give back in that way. And so that's, to me, I'll be successful when I'm giving more than I'm taking from those around me. So that's kind of, thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things I like to do is just take it back, and
Sure.
you mentioned that you grew up in the town of Did you grow up in Oyster Bay?
So I grew up, town of Oyster Bay covers a large portion of northern Nassau County. So you've got Syosset, Plainview, Jericho, Hicksville, Bethpage. Massapequa is like the furthest south town. It kind of runs down.
Bay also?
Yeah, it runs down the 135. So believe it or not, Massapequa falls into town of Oyster Bay. Bethpage, a little portion of Farmingdale, and so on. So I actually grew up in Syosset.
You went to Syosset High School?
I did. I went to Syosset High School. I moved here in kindergarten. I was born in Queens.
Okay.
And my parents decided to do what, most parents, first generation kids do. Let's somehow get into a good school district.
Right.
And that's what we did. And they bought their first house when I was in kindergarten, right on South Oyster Bay Road, right by that firehouse, and, kind of bounced around from there, kind of worked their way up from there. But that's how I kind of got into Syosset schools and stayed, in that sort of area throughout my life. I even went to Hofstra University.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, well, I did after I messed up. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But I ended up at Hofstra after I, did some dilly-dallying that kids will do sometimes when they're trying to find themselves. So we'll definitely talk about that as well.
Yeah, we're going to get into all that. I mean, that sounds like some good dirt we got to get.
Oh, there's good stuff in there for sure.
It was pretty similar for me. I was born in Brooklyn, and we lived there. There were actually 11 of us living in a 3-bedroom apartment in Start City. And my brother, who's 7 years older than me, was about to start hike school. So my mom said, okay, we got to move to a good school district.
Right.
So we moved to the South Shore. We moved to Rockville Center. My brother, we went to Oceanside schools. And I was actually starting first grade. So that's when we moved out to the island. And my mom's actually still in that house that she bought in like 1981.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So very, very similar. Do you have siblings as well?
I do. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. My brother is studying to become a scholar in Islamic studies.
Oh, wow.
And my sister is, and this is something that my parents dreamed of, and I wasn't able to knock this out.
She's going to be a doctor, right?
She's going to be a doctor. That's exactly right. You hit it. I didn't even tell you that, so I hit it right on the head. She's training to be a resident. She's a resident right now at University of Michigan.
Oh, really?
For ophthalmology, yeah.
Well, my brother's an ophthalmologist.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, yeah.
And she's doing great. She went to Einstein Medical School.
Wow.
Graduated high school super young. Graduated NYU at like 19 years old.
Wow.
Super smart kid, but also extremely personable. Just someone that, whether you're 3 years old or 103 years old, her bedside manner, her delivery, her demeanor is just, she's incredible.
That's the X factor, man.
Yeah. She's a real.
Let's talk about you, man. So you went to Syosset High School. You mentioned that, there was maybe like a little fork in the road and you took the wrong fork. Why don't you tell us a little bit about college,
Sure.
how you ended up at Hofstra, because I think that's where the story is.
Yeah, so I'm going to take you way back. So I'll take you back to my chubby, awkward middle school, elementary school days. My dad worked really hard. My dad's an accountant.
Okay.
That's what that was his profession.
He has his own accounting firm?
He actually did the old-fashioned route, went to college, did his couple years in public accounting, and then got into, worked as an internal auditor for a property management company. They did hotels and sort of like office space throughout the country, and he did that for about 25 years. So that was basically my entire childhood. And when you become an internal auditor, you sort of, I don't want to say lose touch, but you become so into that routine that you don't necessarily, when you leave a place like that, you sort of like have worked yourself out of whatever the trend is or the going, the professional, so on and so forth. Always maintain a CPA and so on, but that was his grind. And when I was in high school,
did your mom? Sorry to interrupt you. Does your mom work as well?
My mom was educated in Pakistan as a physician, and when she came here, she got married and had the kids, and was in the process of going back to get into that field, but never did. She became sick when I was a kid, and then my sister came, so she started she became a stay-at-home mom, and then she found her passion in teaching kids religious studies. So that's something that she's done voluntarily for over 20 years and hasn't taken a dime. And I kind of was part of that too a little bit, taught a little bit, learned a little bit. So I have a great appreciation for, that's where kind of like that passion comes from,
Gotcha.
to give back and give some time to the people that need it. So I wonder what life would have been like, how it would have been different if she had stayed that course. But that's
life.
That's life, right?
Yeah.
So that was mom, and then so dad in high school switched careers because that company closed up shop, and my father was, I would say, probably in his early 50s, and it was time to find something new, a new career, which is tough. It's very tough. So he got his real estate license, joined at the time it was called Prudential, now it's called Element. Got his real estate license and started doing the real estate sales thing. And, we all know that it's a very tough grind. You wake up one day, you say, I want to be a realtor. And I get this a lot from other people as well. So you have to build the clientele, build the rapport, and it's very hard to get the volume. You see these guys on TV, on Instagram, crushing it. It's 1 in every 100, and I think that's a generous, ratio. So he did that for a while, got into building a little bit, and then the Great Recession came. So that wiped everyone out.
Right.
So all through high school, my dad was sort of in this like transitional phase with his career, and I hope my parents don't kill me for saying this, but we didn't grow up well off.
Right.
We grew up in a situation where we got into the school district. My dad had a good job, unbelievable insurance and benefits, but we weren't. I grew up around kids that
I get it.
had everything going for them.
Right.
The new Jordans, the Jordans, the Air Max 95s.
Right.
I could get them now, but back then I couldn't.
Totally.
So and truly, that's where my drive comes from.
Yeah,
I was my first job. I tried to get a job before I was 14, which I find out was not possible because you need work papers. So I used to knock on doors, ask hey, could I work for you? Da 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 da. They're like, listen, kid, you're not even 14 years old. If something happens, we're dead. So my first job was at ShopRite, bagging groceries at the Plainview Shopping Center, $5.15. Okay, this was back in 2001, and all I wanted was a cell phone at the time, the blue Nokia 8260, right? So that was the first hurdle. For whatever reason, I was the rebel. I was the oldest, your first generation. So everything you do is crazy. It's shocking. Right. Come home late, it's shocking. Yeah. Get caught doing something illicit, it's shocking. So I had a very up and down relationship, being the first generation, being the oldest kid with my parents. And so very young, I became very independent. I remember, this is a true story. I remember walking, I'm sure you're familiar with the area. There's a Geico building on Woodbury Road. This is a true story. I remember walking, it was a Black Friday sale. You guys are going to all laugh, at Kmart. And they had a bike for sale for $60. And I walked from the Geico building, Woodbury Road, that's where we lived at the time, through Thompson Middle School, into that neighborhood where Willits Elementary School is, and got to Kmart and got their last $60 Huffy, and it had the springs in the front and the spring on the seat, and they were crappy springs, but I have a picture of a similar bike I found recently, and I was like, wow, it really took me back in time. And I rode that bike home, and it was cold. Sometimes in November you can get that real cold, and my hands, I remember, like, I thought they were gonna fall off.
Wow.
And that was my bike for my jobs at CVS, at King Cullen. I rode that bike to the gym. It used to be called Sport Time on Jericho Turnpike. I think it's called Synergy now. That sort of got me through high school. I went away to school to Buffalo. At the time, I definitely wasn't sharp enough to get the medical school route, so I did the next best thing for the Dacey parents, and that's pharmacy. So I got into the pharmacy program in Buffalo. Which is
a really good pharmacy program.
Yeah, and even back then it was. Yeah. And you get. I get there and they mail you your schedule because it's a fast track program, and between a little financial aid and a little bit of scholarships, I basically got a full ride to Buffalo. And
were you a good student?
So it's funny, right? I was the B+, A- student that didn't study, and like you said, right, life happens, and how do you go with it, right? I wonder what would have happened if I'd actually applied myself. I never took an SAT review course, never really applied myself. I was always working and going to school. That was my thing. So when you're doing that, you don't have time for tutors and for the extracurricular activities. So I was a B+, A- student that got into school. It's so funny. I was so lazy about this college application process that I didn't even send a supplementary application to the University of Buffalo. I sent the initial application with my transcript and the SAT score. They accepted me, and I said, forget about it. I'm done. It's a good pharmacy program.
Yeah.
It's close enough to home where I can drive. I can take my car because at that time I didn't have a car yet, and that was my biggest passion in life. And I could tell you stories for days about the mishaps that came along with that. But I went away to school, and my first week there, the money that I'd made working in the summer at Driftwood Day Camp, I got into a little fender bender, had to pay the kid to make the problem go away, and I was really truly down to like $100. So I got a job at Tim Hortons, which is the Dunkin' Donuts of Buffalo in Canada. The hairnet, the visor, the khakis, the shirt, the whole outfit, the name tag. It was funny. I mean, my friends thought it was real funny. 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. That was my shift.
Wow.
So naturally, the pharmacy program, 17 credits, was it's a tough balance.
Grind.
So I didn't do well. Second semester, I switched majors, got right out of pharmacy. I knew it wasn't for me. The evolutionary biology, the chemistry, the math, the science. I knew it. I was trying to go the route that you would expect, or the parents would expect, and it just wasn't for me. So I switched to business. But just because of, I guess, a lack of maturity, I went away to school 17, and I used to smoke cigarettes. I was a silly kid back then, and I wasn't even old enough to buy my own cigarettes, and I was still running around getting in trouble. I got a job second semester delivering pizza, which I found is the best job.
Dude, best job I ever had was delivering pizza.
And I did it for years. And it's the only way to make 15 or 20 bucks an hour when you're a kid and still kind of do your own thing,
right?
Not be under someone's, whereas like waiting tables, I did it once or twice, and it just didn't
There's a lot of freedom when you deliver pizza.
Yeah.
Listen to music, you're like, just cruising around town.
And cruise
that was
around.
before I was delivering pizzas before GPS, man. So it's like
Me too. There was no iPhones. There was none of that. So you get lost and you ask people for directions. You stop for gas. I really did it all. And in Buffalo, I didn't know anything. So I did that in Buffalo. Came home early. My roommate's mom was very upset with me for leaving early. But I had nothing there. I had no attachment. I was miserable. I came home, and needless to say, my parents weren't pleased.
So you left in the middle of the semester?
I left 2 weeks early.
Okay.
I left 2 weeks early. I sold my textbooks, and I packed up my stuff.
Were you like, I'm done with school?
I was done with school. I decided at that point that I was never going back to college again. And it really came to bite me in the butt later on because I had never withdrawn from those classes. So I had a 1.4 my first semester. True. This is true numbers. And a 0.0 my second semester.
Wow.
And all of that came with me later in life, came back to haunt me.
Oh, wow.
So I came home. My parents were not pleased. I was reminded daily, it's tough love in our culture, in my culture. Yeah. It's tough love. So that was something that I had to kind of get my hands around, get my arms around. And so what did I do, right? I went back to delivering pizza because that's the best way to make, $500-600 a week, kind of maintain your independence and while you figure yourself out. And I got my real estate license. And I mentioned that my dad at the time, this is 2004, mid 2005 now. I got my real estate license. And before I could put a deal together, I was out of the business. And this is what happens with realtors, right? You get in, you're really high on this potential of making an unlimited amount of money. They sell you the dream. There's no limit, commissions, there's no salary, there's no hours. So I got a license. I joined.
Is it costly to get a license?
It's not. It's a couple $100 to take the course,
okay.
A couple bucks to take the state exam.
Okay.
And as long as you have a sponsoring broker, which at the time I joined Element, but in Plainview, you're good to go. So I was delivering pizza in Plainview, and down the road there was an office. An Element office in Plainview, and I'm still really good friends with the owner of that Mario's in Plainview on Old Country Road. His name's Peter, and he's the freaking man. And he was a young guy like me, so while I was getting in trouble and working there, you'd kind of get advice from someone like that, so it was good. So I left that job and joined another pizzeria, Woodbury Pizza, and kind of worked. Decided that all right, not going to school ever again for the rest of my life is not a viable course. So I went to Nassau, which was a very inexpensive way to get back into the school system. At this point, I was fully supporting myself.
So you were now what, 20?
I was about 20.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about 20. Got back to Nassau, crushed it. Took my 60 credits. I was an accounting major at the time. I figured that if you're going to get a business degree, you might as well get one in accounting or finance. And accounting was, my father had been an accountant. So I said, you know what? Let me just go this route. At least I know there's job security in being an accountant. So I went to Nassau, crushed it. A little bit of a procrastinator back then, so I wait till a week and a half before fall semester starts, and I go into Hofstra's open admissions, and they're like, there's people there to get into school, but it's like crazy. Like, what the hell are you thinking? It's August 15th, and school starts in 10 days, and you're not even a student yet.
Right.
So I walk in there, and I apply for classes, and they look at my Nassau transcript like, wow, you did really well, but what the heck happened in Buffalo, right? They're like, we're going to have to go back and talk to some people and see, like, I'm like, listen, I
really, they like invest. They call Buffalo.
No, but like, I guess
they have to talk to people at Hofstra.
Yeah. So this admissions counselor must have had to go back and talk to management and see what the heck do we do with this kid?
Yeah.
And she comes back like 20 minutes later, and I'm sitting there biting my nails and freaking out. I'm just like, what the hell am I gonna do? I'm done at Nassau, and I didn't get the 2-year degree at Nassau because I didn't want to waste time. I'd already messed up, right? I'd already taken like 4 or 5 semesters off, so I didn't want to take unnecessary classes. I think out of 64 credits, 62 transferred to Hofstra. So I had spent my time well there.
Yeah.
Got in. So I did get in. Obviously, I graduated, and
with an accounting degree.
With an accounting degree, I did an internship at PwC.
In the city.
In the city at their Madison Avenue office, and it's every kid's dream, right? To get the job in the city. Take the train. And you're in a big, skyscraper.
Yeah.
Bryant Park is right there. You're going out for lunch. Park Avenue. This is what.
Dream,
yeah, I hated it.
Right.
I hated it. I was taking 3 trains. I was taking the LIRR to Penn. Then I was taking the 1, 2, or 3. Downtown. Uptown a couple blocks, and then on the shuttle from Times Square to Grand Central. Right. And I'm not a city person. I'm terrible with the city directions, GPS, everything. But I did it for 7 weeks. After 2 weeks, I looked at my senior manager and I asked her, I said, is this what I'm going to be doing for the next several years? 2 computer screens, work papers, partnership return.
What were you doing exactly? Like, what is the day-to-day?
So I got into the real estate group there. It always been something that I was interested in. And I leveraged my real estate license on my resume. You know what we all do, right? Embellish that resume to get that first internship. And so I got into the real estate tax group. It was a group of about 80 or 90 people. And what you did was you prepared partnership returns and S corp returns for these large entities. And I'm sure you've seen this. Most of the resorts that are owned overseas and hotels, there's like dozens of shell corporations, and everyone files these empty returns with no income.
The K1s.
The K1s. Right, exactly. Yeah. So I'm doing these M1s and K1s, and I hadn't even taken a tax class yet, so I was lost the whole time.
Sounds really boring though.
It was terrible. I had 2 computer screens in front of me, and I had a senior that was a Hofstra grad. But it became, I got along very well with the other interns, and they moved us in a conference room, and it became a running joke, because when this gentleman would come in the room, he would berate me, and he'd actually huff and puff, and so we'd all get quiet when he'd come in the room. He'd rip me apart, and then he'd leave. So I was miserable. So I asked my senior, I said, hey, is this really what I'm going to be doing? She goes, yeah. And I'm like, how long before I can transfer out of the real estate group? And she's like, probably 2 to 3 years, something like that. So I knew right away this wasn't for me. And
Gotcha.
I don't want to keep you guys here all day, so I'll start to pick it up a little bit. Long story short, I decided that I wanted to go to law school. So
what motivated that?
So you've got 2 choices in accounting. You go public accounting, in my opinion. You go public accounting for a couple of years, and then you either work for one of your clients, or you continue down public accounting, and then you can become a partner one day. The partner grind is crazy. It's like 12 years, and
there's no guarantee.
There's no guarantee. Right. Number one, that you'll become partner. Number 2, a lot of times people bounce from firm to firm every couple of years to sort of cut that time down. But a lot of times you get stuck in a senior manager position or director position, and that's where they see your potential at. So you're stuck. So that's one option. Second option is you go and become you get your accounting degree, and you get the tax law side, right? Because my concentration was tax. So I thought maybe let me get the law degree. Let me get situated in that tax law field, and then this way, you know, you make good money, and maybe one day I can sort of open my own practice and do my own thing.
Your parents would be happy with that too.
And my parents would be, that's good.
So,
You can't become a doctor, become a lawyer. It's not the best, but it's second best. And so, you know, at the time, I met my now wife at Hofstra, and I literally was walking down a hallway with a friend, saw this girl out of the corner of my eye, and said to this person, "Oh, hey, you know, she's kind of cute. Like, what's her deal?" And she knocked on her door and left me there. "Hey, this is my friend Shahzad," and walked away. And 10 years later, here we are.
Wow.
But so she had an apartment off campus.
She's not Muslim, right?
She was not Muslim. And this is like, again, my parents are gonna kill me, but
Are they gonna listen to this?
probably not, unless it's brought to their attention in some way. But there's the up and down relationship that I had with my pops through high school. You know, being that kid that messed around a little bit, smoked a little bit, drank a little bit. You know, did the things that kids do.
That grew up in America. Yeah.
That grew up in America, right?
And have Indian parents.
This was. So after I had, you know, got through my early 20s, I had kind of gone back and like been like, hey, listen, like, you know, I'm working really hard. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. Let's fix this problem, you know? And then so the wife, the choices I made kind of have maintained that sort of up and down kind of trajectory. But hey, you know, it is what it is. I really appreciate all the challenges that life throws my way, because I would not be where I am today without those challenges. But to make a long story short, I was sitting there studying for my LSATs. I had convinced the dean of the business school at Hofstra to write me a recommendation letter. So I had obviously done pretty well there. I had started the review course. I was pretty much halfway through that, taking a couple practice tests. Yeah. I knew where I was going to score, you know, which is not where I wanted to score. I was going to probably score in like the low 160s. I really wanted to get into the high 160s, maybe 170, so I could get into like a top 20, top 30 law school. But I just wasn't feeling it. And one day, this is a true story. One day I closed the book, the LSAT book. I looked at my future wife and I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this.
You're very definitive. Man.
Yeah,
like,
you know,
it's like, I'm leaving college. You know, I mean, it's amazing.
I closed the book and I said to her, you know, this just doesn't feel right. And I remember sitting in my senior level accounting class. Lehman had just gone under. The department head was my professor.
So it's 2008 now.
Yeah. Well, 2009, I closed the book.
Okay.
But in 2008, in my senior level accounting class, I was a junior at Hofstra, and I jumped right into a senior level accounting class. Yeah. And because I had focused so much on the accounting classes at Nassau, that's where I was at when I got to Hofstra. And Lehman went under, and my professor came in the room, and he said to us, he says, you kids don't understand yet, but your lives have forever changed. This was the beginning of what would have been the greatest meltdown in modern times. So when I closed that book, we were already in the recession. You know, Obama had just gotten elected, and you know, bailouts for this company and bailouts for that company. And I was I've always been on top of business. I've always been on top of business news since I was a kid. I was the kid that used to come home and talk stocks with my dad at 10 years old. So it just didn't feel right. And from a financial standpoint, probably the best decision I ever made, because a lot of the kids that grew up, a lot of the kids that went to law school around the time that I would have gone to law school, were doing paralegal work as lawyers because there was just no work.
Jobs,
So when I closed that book, I had a year left to school. I graduated in 2010. I should have graduated in 08, but I took off the time to kind of find myself. And I went back to my father, and the recession had been pretty tough on him. There's nobody buying and selling. There's nobody building. He was lucky enough to have sold. He had started building just before the recession. So you're just learning, and this business is tough because you got to learn the hard way pretty much every step of the way, right? Trades are going to take advantage of you. You're not going to be able to get through the permit process. So long story short, he got, he had taken a break for a couple of years, and I went back to my dad and I said, look, I hustled up some money. It's not the end of the world. Let's get in on a project.
So that's from like delivering pizzas and stuff. Like, how'd you get the money?
Cars, tickets, anything you can imagine.
Right. So you always had like a little side hustle.
Always hustling.
So you mean tickets? Like you'd like buy tickets,
concert tickets, Jay-Z tickets, Deadmau5 tickets, Rihanna tickets. I made a killing on Justin Bieber tickets senior year of high school. A senior year of college. I sort of called Justin Bieber. I was like, this kid's gonna be like, when
So would you just buy a bunch of tickets?
Yeah, I'd sit there at the computer lab at Hofstra with 4 computer screens in front of me and buy as many tickets as I can.
Would you just leverage credit card debt to do it? Like
Pretty much. Friends' credit cards, wife's credit card, girlfriend's credit card. Anybody that would give me a card number that I was close enough with.
You've always been very sort of entrepreneurial, man. I mean, that's like, you would take a risk to, that's risky, right?
I've been taking a lot of risks. Yeah. So yeah, that was definitely a good way to, and I had pretty much paid for school that way.
Wow.
I didn't have any debt. I did get some financial aid. I did get some scholarship at Hofstra.
So you paid for, but like what your residual tuition you paid for by like this side hustle stuff?
Side hustles. I had like 3 or 4 side hustles, and I paid all this stuff off. So I didn't have the crippling debt that
of course.
a lot of times keeps people. My wife, has
I didn't either. I was very fortunate.
Yeah, my wife has a solid amount of debt. We kind of worked through that from Hofstra. I always say to her, I was like, hey, you got this debt, but you got me too, so it's not a bad deal, right? And so I went to my father and I said, look, let's. So
how much cash did you have at that point? Like
I had about 100,000.
Damn.
Okay.
Dude, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it was a good amount of money, but it wasn't enough to build a house. So the average cost, even back then, you buy a house for 300, you put in 300, or 200, whatever, and you sell it for 6, or you sell it for 7, whatever the case may be.
Dude, let's go back a little bit though. You made $100,000 selling tickets and shit like that?
I sold everything, man. I sold tickets, I sold cars.
Like what? You'd flip cars?
Yeah, I buy a car on Craigslist, clean it up, sell it. You make $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, things like that. I invested some money with a couple people, made a little money, traded a little stocks. I bought some stocks after the recession, made a little money. Just you put it together and you kind of figure it out. It was a little bit of luck, a little bit of hustle. But between
that's pretty incredible though.
I tried, man, and so I put this little bit of money together, but it wasn't enough. And this is when I was able to leverage the good relationships I had with people and borrow a bunch of money. And so this first project
from individuals, you borrowed
from individuals. This first project, so my father's money was tied up. The house that he lived in was paid off. The stuff that he had sold had been sold, and so he's like, all right, we could do this. I have this short sale in Hicksville that so and so get her hands on. And back then nobody knew what a short sale was. It was very early in the crisis. This was probably now 2010. And
was this area somewhat like decimated, would you say, like around that time? Like was Hicksville like a
So now Hicksville is the hottest thing since sliced bread. It's like I'm building $1 million homes in Hicksville right now, which 5 years ago would have been unthinkable. And the same house, my first project that I sold for $535 back in 2012, that same house as it stands today is worth at least $700,000.
Wow.
So Hicksville's come up quite a bit. This is right behind the Broadway Mall, the State Streets, Nevada, and California, and so on. The first house I built was on California Street. So we were supposed to get a mortgage, have somebody co-sign, blah blah blah. That didn't fall through. That fell through, and I remember sitting in my $1,000 a month apartment with my future wife, and I said to her, we can either raise $150,000, $200,000 in the next 30 days, or we have to let this deal go. And during this time, short sales used to take like a year and a half, so this whole
time,
of
like legal things and banks.
Yeah, so I was in contract with on the short sale for over a year, not in school anymore, not really working, waking up when I feel like.
Were you still doing side shit?
Yeah, but it gets old at some point, right? Like you're not making enough money to live. I was living frugal, right? So I got this $1,000 a month apartment, and I'm working in restaurants, doing whatever I can to kind of get by. But the clock is ticking, and we sat down, and we got the phone call earlier that day, and the phone call basically said, look, this person that was going to help you kind of get co-sign this mortgage, they're not qualified. So, you have 30 days to close. All right. So, and normally short sales, foreclosures, it's always cash anyway. Right. It's the only way you get a mortgage on that kind of deal is either private money, or if there's no mortgage contingency clause in the contract, and you just kind of show up with a check from a bank. They don't care. Money's green as long as they get paid. So the conversation started with me being miserable. Like I had put all my eggs in this basket. I had said to myself, if this doesn't go through, I'm in big trouble. So I went to every person I knew, and these people, I have so much love for them still to this day, because some of these kids gave me $10, $15, $20,000, and
what was the upside for them?
Nothing.
So like, hey, Mike, I need 10 grand.
Those kids, and I can name them right now because I have that much love for them, gave me money with no interest, believing in me because they'd see me kind of be this kid that's always hustling, always kind of making things happen. And believe me, I return the favor wherever possible. I'm like the grandpa. Credit cards, help them build their credit, lease their cars. I tried to give, that's like my passion too, like finance and stuff. So I get this money in 30 days at 22 years old, 23 years old. I raised $150,000 in 30 days, which is an insane amount of money.
Wow.
The purchase price was $220,000, which for Hicksville, I'd take 20 of them right now if I could get them. And we put it together. My pops lent me a little bit of money, and he helped me to kind of get rolling, and we learned together.
How long did it take you to pay everybody back?
As soon as I finished the project,
okay,
which took about 7 or 8 months, I was able to get the money back.
So you bought it for $220, and then what happens?
I needed a variance because I wanted to build something that was too big for the lot, which I had never done before. My pops had never done before.
So you were tearing it down?
I have pictures of it. I'm gonna share them with you later. We tore it down to the extent that there was 2 walls left.
Okay.
All right. I'm sure you've seen those reconstructions where like you bump it out in the back, you bump it on the side, you build up on the top. For all intents and purposes, it's a new house, but the reason why people do that is because you don't have to go through all the rigors of new construction, disconnecting sewer, disconnecting water. The permit process is a little bit easier, and the taxes end up sometimes being a little bit lower. Okay. So that's the draw with why you see these like one wall reconstructions. And Nassau County's kind of closed that up a little bit. I see people getting banged out pretty good on the assessments. So you save a couple thousand a year, but it's not like, it's going to be half of what a new construction is. And we put it together. We got through the first project, and
how much did you sell it for?
I sold it for $535, and
so you made a lot of money.
We did good. I mean, I spent probably $175,000, $180,000 on the project. To this day, that's one of the highest ROI projects I've ever gotten.
On margin, like how did you have the money to spend on the project? Like, did you borrow that?
I borrowed money from like 25 people.
So even that $175,000 you borrowed?
I borrowed money. Yeah, leveraged credit cards, borrowed a little money from family members, borrowed a little money from friends, put it together. I ended up owing some contractors money at the end of the job. Okay. But we got everybody paid. And to this day, that's, I think, why most of my subcontractors tolerate me. I'm famous for paying on time. Yeah. That's GCs and builders are notorious for sticking it to the subs. And I always pay. You leave, you got to check on the way out. And so
you manage all that, like you deal with all the subcontractors and stuff.
I manage all that.
So you're the general contractor, basically.
I stay away from
project
that term.
manager. I guess.
Yeah, because there's some very specific criteria to be a general contractor. And I don't like the word developer, even though everyone likes to call themselves a developer. I call myself a builder. I think a developer is a title I want to give myself when I'm really moving and shaking. But I got through that first project, and there were some differences, my pops and I sort of learned together, right? Because this was not his primary focus in life, up until his,
it wasn't yours either.
Right. Well, I mean,
now it is.
I was a kid, right? So, we got through that first project, and I knew that I kind of had to go on my own,
you mean not with your dad?
Yeah, kind of go on my own and sort of. So again, I'm gonna get killed, but
it was tough working with your dad.
Difference of opinion, old school, new school. Let's stick this old thing in here and I wanted to do the
because your shit is nice. Like I looking through your videos and stuff.
I don't go crazy, but I'm very adamant about fit and finish and quality. You can always spend $1 million on a kitchen. You can always spend $1 million on finishes, but I walk into some of these houses and I'm just mortified by like the lack of care for like the little details. It's not like it's gonna cost you $100,000 more to give a damn, you know? it might cost you like 10K more. It doesn't cost anything to keep a clean job site, right? So these are the things that that are very important to me. So I very much appreciate that experience that I had working with my pops, but I knew that I kind of had to go on my own if I wanted to take the risks that I wanted to take
and execute your vision.
Right. So it's funny. I bought an iPad, and back then an iPad was $800. And I got after Hurricane Irene, one of my buddies from the gym, his house got flooded. That same house got flooded a year later from Sandy. He had 2 feet in Irene and 6 feet from Sandy.
Wow. Where?
In Freeport.
Okay.
Yeah. So he bought his first house in Freeport. He was an attorney, and he walked up to me at the gym one day and said, "Hey, I heard you do construction. Can you come fix my house?" And I said, "Sure, I'll come give you an estimate, whatever." And back then I was giving my work away just to stay busy, A, and B, to sort of build a little bit of a rapport in the area. So I go over there, I do the job, and I had just bought an iPad.
So is that the type of stuff you were doing at that point?
Anything, man.
Anything. So I was like, hey, I got to redo my kitchen.
I pointed somebody's brick chimney for like $300. I had a mason come and do it. You're not even supposed to do stuff like this. You need licenses and insurances and stuff to do stuff like this. And it was my friend's dad, and I had the house was all original. This house in East Meadow, and I brought a contractor over there to point. When they fill in the mortar and sort of like make it look nice and new, power wash it and acid wash it, point it. And I made like $150, $200 from this side job, and had a bunch of insults on the way out from this kid's dad, who was like, "Oh, I'm not happy," and this and that. So, I did everything, man. I mean, I did kitchens, I did bathrooms, I did basements, anything to get experience, and anything to keep the operation growing. And so I did. So this guy at the gym, I bought this iPad, and I decided, you know what? Let's let me try to pitch this guy. That was my first investor. I said to him, "Look, this is what I'm doing. This is the first house I built." And we went on to build 2 or 3 houses with this investor, and he moved to Texas, so I had to kind of find a new investor. And
so he was funding the projects.
He was funding the projects.
So you built 2 or 3 houses with this guy.
I built 2 or 3 houses with this guy.
And then how does that work? What's his cut?
So I did a flip in Levittown, where I put up the renovation money, he put the down payment, and he paid the carrying costs. So
he was paying the taxes.
And I signed a terrible deal. Unsecured, unguaranteed. He owns the house. I'm not on the deed. I'm not on the title. Okay. And I'm putting in money to renovate the house.
You could have gotten F potentially.
Oh yeah. And he's a lawyer.
Right.
A lawyer could really stick it to you if they wanted to. But this guy was a real gentleman. He's like probably 6-7 years older than I am. We got rid of it, right? We actually got that first job shut down. I did it without a permit.
Wow.
And I don't recommend this to anybody. But it was a quick flip, and you'll see this all the time.
So what's the margins on something like that?
Tight, man. I probably made $25,000 my cut, $25,000 his cut. We split the profit, because what ended up happening was we bought the house in the low 2s with the down payment and his carrying costs. I'd say he was out of pocket like 80 grand. The renovation, I was out of pocket like 80, 90 grand. So we just split the profit right down the middle. And I probably made like $25,000-$30,000.
So that was a smaller scale renovation and stuff.
Well, it was a full gut.
It was a full gut.
Yeah, that's why the town came and shut it down. Yeah, it was a little house, little original Levitt, no basement, and you're doing everything by. I have pictures of my mask black from that. I still have it in my camera roll. Me and my buddies did the demo by hand.
Wow.
And I guess one of the neighbors wasn't thrilled with the fact that there was no permit, shut the job down, and I had to go to my investor and tell him, "Hey, listen, like the town just came and shut this job down." And I was 25. I had to go to the town of Hempstead, navigate through that. I was already blacklisted because you got caught up now. So submitted a hardship letter, and within 6 weeks got the job rolling again. And my saving grace.
So your guy was carrying the cost for those 6 weeks.
Yeah,
too. Okay.
yeah. But 6 weeks could have turned into 6 months,
right,
like this.
Of course,
But I worked through it. I have the gift of gab, man. Thank God.
Yeah.
I was able to sweet talk and just kind of say, "Look, I'm trying to get going. This was a mistake. You'll never ever see me." That line works for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I get pulled over. "Officer, I apologize. I have this card. You will never see me again. I promise." And they're like, they want to see you again just so they could stick it to you. So I got out of that mess. And my saving grace was...
So that was your second project?
That was
your
my second project.
Okay.
And my saving grace was that I sold the house in 1 week.
Wow. And you're the broker?
I was a broker. I sold the house in 1 week, put the house on the market, and this was the first time that I'd gotten grilled by a buyer. Okay, because the first one was an easy deal. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to deal with the BS. I got the buyer, his wife, and the buyer's parents, and I'm 25 and I'm 32 now, right? So imagine what I looked like when I was 25, right? A little kid, and I have this mom and dad and husband and wife ripping me apart. Oh, what did you do here? What did you do there? The home inspector's there, and this is where I learned my poise. This is where I learned how to keep it together.
Right.
I remember the father saying, oh, you did all this goddamn work and you couldn't change the gutters. I'm like, sir, the gutters were done 2 years before I bought the house. We did the siding, we did the roof, we did everything we were supposed to do. Why would I spend another $1,200 on gutters? Get some CLR, wipe it down, and you're good to go. And I have pictures of every job I've ever done.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful gut reno. And the best deal you make is the one where no one calls you back afterwards to tell you that you did something wrong. I never heard from them again. So, and even that first flip, and this is like a major part of my philosophy, we chopped the slab. The Levitt houses have no basements. Mm-hmm. Chopped the slab, all new plumbing underground, all new insulation, all new electric. That's why, and if you watch my vlog,
that's one of the things in one of your videos you actually mentioned.
It's a big thing. I'm not a flipper.
Right.
I
it's like very high quality. Like what's inside the walls is high quality.
To me, that's the most important thing.
Right.
How hard is it to go on a weekend and order a new vanity or upgrade your toilet, or change out a kitchen faucet? Piece of cake, right? But how are you going to upgrade your insulation, or how are you going to upgrade your sheathing or your plumbing, your HVAC? Right. The walls are closed. I almost have a phobia of cutting sheetrock. You would think as a builder, oh, you cut sheetrock every day. When I finish a house, I take such pride in the videos and the punch lists and just kind of like mapping everything out before I close the walls that I despise even moving an outlet after the walls are closed. So yeah, I mean, one thing led to another, and I landed my first big investor in 2014, and this was a defining project for me. This was the project that almost sunk the entire ship.
Okay.
I remember one day my father actually came to one of the job sites, and I'll tell you more about this project, but he came to the job site and he's like, Shahzad, I'll never forget this. He goes, Shahzad, I do not have the stomach for what you're doing right now. That was like the closest thing to a compliment, And I remember saying to my dad, I was like, yeah, we'll be all right. I didn't even know we were going to be all right. And so basically the long and short of it, this project was a new construction in Hicksville that involved building a road and running sewer, gas, water, and knocking down another house across the street and building 2 new homes. Okay. The second house wasn't even in the mix, and I'll try to keep it short because I could talk all day, but this lot was on Zillow. It wasn't even on MLS. And me and my buddy used to sit around and to do the things that kids do for hobbies and say, yo man, it'd be so cool if we just bought this lot. And literally we had this conversation like a dozen times. And one day I'm like, you know what, man? I have exactly enough money. I'm going to go buy this lot. And it was right behind the Department of Labor, Old Country Road. There's a Department of Labor right by that Subaru dealership. No, that's not what the Subaru dealership. There's a John Deere dealership on Old Country Road. There's a Department of Labor on the other side.
Is that in Westbury or something?
No, it's Hicksville proper. If you're heading west on Old Country Road, it's after Broadway on the left-hand side. Okay.
Oh yeah, I know exactly where that is.
Right. So there's a Department of Labor building. There's a street behind there called Cortlandt Avenue, and I bought this lot, and man, I didn't even know what the heck I'd gotten myself into. To make a long story short, I did not have water service to that house. I did not have enough money to build the house, and me being, this person that was always looking for kind of make some money, get a quick gig hustle going. I had gone to Florida before I got married with one of my close friends, and I watched him make 12% in one day trading Forex. So I gave him the last $100,000 I had after buying that lot, and I said, listen, guy, you've been on a tear for a year and a half now. I need you to take this money. I need you to do something magical with it. And you work out a retainer like 25% or whatever they keep. I lost all 100,000.
No way.
I lost.
He
all
lost
100,000.
100 grand.
He lost 50. I fired him after he lost 50, and I took over, and I didn't know anything about forex, and I got back some of it, but I wouldn't close out my losing trades.
What is that? What's
foreign exchange?
a foreign exchange?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had traded equities since I was a
Okay.
kid, but forex was the
So it's like
fast
trading
money.
currency.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's the fast money. If you catch a good,
Yeah.
if you catch a good trade with high risk, you could make some serious money. But that's exactly what it is, high risk.
Right.
And
You learned the hard way.
I fired him after he lost 48,000. I had 52 left. I'd gotten back to 67. Wouldn't close out my losers, and to make a long story short, I lost the rest of it.
Wow.
I had 3,000 left. I took it out. Took my wife and I on a little vacation, and picked up the
Did
pieces.
she know like you're?
She knew everything.
Yeah.
I was miserable.
Yeah.
I was miserable. This was the same year that I got married. This was the same year that some other things had happened, and I just
So you were sitting on this lot.
bought this
You bought the lot and
210,000.
you were out of all your money basically.
I had 300,000 to my name. I spent 200,000 on the lot. I had 100K left over,
and you're down to 3.
and I was down to 3.
And
I'm still every year you're allowed to write off 3,000
Yeah.
towards of a carry forward. I'm still working down that 3,000.
Wow.
Unless you have a short-term capital gain, you get 3,000 a year in an
Right.
allowance for a carry forward. And I lost all 100,000, and because there was no water main, I had to pay a union contractor to come in, extend the water main 100 feet, bring gas,
Which costs like
bring
a
sewer.
fortune.
$40,000 for
Wow.
a day of work, 1 day of work,
Wow.
40 grand. And I've documented everything. I have pictures of every house I've ever built. So this is how I landed my first big investor. He had come to a couple of my open houses, and he had expressed some interest, but I was just like, like, this is just like anybody else, kind of trying to learn the business, whatever.
Express some interest in what? Purchasing these homes or
Getting involved.
getting involved?
Getting
Okay.
involved.
Oh, you had an open house to get investors.
I had
you're saying.
I had other projects, like little flips that I had done. I digress. I should say that this was my second investor, the second big investor. The first guy moved to Texas. The
Right.
second guy was this gentleman that I had met through a mutual friend. It was very tough. We did a couple jobs together. Very, very, very old school. Very much a nickel and dimer. It wasn't my style. We kind of went our separate ways. So
You both made money though.
we made money.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we made money. Some jobs very little, some jobs a bunch, but thank God to this day never lost money. I got my main investor though that I still have to this day from this crazy project on Cortlandt Avenue. I called this guy up and I said, "Look, I have my life savings on Cortlandt Avenue. I bought the lot. I've already paved the road. I built this house. It's in contract. Now you got to put your money where your mouth is and come in across the street." And how I got the house across the street is a funny story. I knocked on the guy's door and I said, "Listen, I'm building this house across the street." He's like, "Yeah, I see that." And I said, and he said, "What can I do for you?" I was like, "I really need to buy your house." And it was a little bungalow.
Why though?
Because I was nervous that I'd have this little bungalow on a gravel driveway built across the street from an $700,000
So it
brand new
devalued
construction.
your house,
Yeah, I was
right,
very
okay.
nervous about that. And so, and I'm wrong. Actually, I was not in contract yet. So that's why I was a little nervous about it. And he said, "Oh, that's actually interesting because my father-in-law owns the house. He owns the house on the other block. It was a through lot. And he had gotten this little bungalow built many years ago before there was so many rules and regulations." He goes, "Why don't you go talk to him?" I went over to him, retired police officer, said to him, "Look, I want to buy your house behind." He's like, "My daughter's moving to Plain Edge. This is perfect." Made a deal, shook his hand, bought the property, called up the investor.
So you pay him in cash, like it's fully.
250,000 cash deal.
Okay.
And I signed the contract without even having secured the investor yet. And then I called up my investor and I said, "Look, you've been telling me for a year now you want to get involved. This is it. This is your opportunity." And both houses sold during construction, and didn't really hear much back from either one of them, so they went all right. But my structure with my investors, obviously they put up the capital, right? So I don't
Right.
get to keep all that money.
Right.
I get paid as a realtor, and I get paid a percentage of the proceeds.
What's in it for your investor?
So I don't do interest. This is something that blows people's minds. I don't deal in interest at all. I have religious obligations that keep me from the simplicity of a hard money sort of arrangement, right? Typically, guys in my space will get hard money. You pay a couple points up front. 12%, 10%, 14%, depending on what your arrangement is, and you got to pay a note every month. At least the interest.
That's like an installment loan.
Yeah, it's typical, right. Hard money arrangement. I've never to this day taken hard money. I have certain reservations. So my partners are all equity partners. So how it works is basically, let's say you and me did a project, right? And now I put my own money in as well because I've built up some capital. But let's say you and I get into a project. We buy a house for 300. We plan on building a new construction for 400, and we want to sell it for 850. Let's say, right?
Do you stay within the budget, generally? So say like that. Say we did go to right.
I'm on point.
Okay,
I'm
so
a maniac.
It's not going to be like, hey, okay, we need another capital call or anything like that. Okay.
No. I'm such a maniac that every night before I go to sleep, and if not that night, the next day, I put every receipt in the computer.
Yeah, I saw in your video. Yeah,
every project that I'm at right now, like today, to the day, I know what my cost is.
Right.
And when you're that meticulous about your record keeping, it's not going to get away from you.
Yeah.
And if there's an issue, very early on, I'll be able to say, hey, Doc, we have a problem. Lumber went up 40% this year because of the tariffs. We're like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 over. It's never like $100,000 surprise. It's like a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 surprise. Right. Like, oh man, I wasn't planning on replacing the sewer line, but it's all rotted out. And this is what I think separates me from some of my competition.
Right.
For example, I'm building a house right now in Hicksville, and like I mentioned in my first flip, I do all new plumbing. Before I connect to the main sewer line, I'll drop a camera in there and see. There's a special camera that these sewer. I'm sure you've heard like Roto-Rooter and guys like that. They'll put a camera in your line to see what's going on, roots or a rotted sewer line, and I'll see that this sewer line was all rotted out in the bottom. Now, most people would never even take the step to put the camera in there.
Right.
So what are they going to do? They're going to dormer a house. I get these calls, I get these texts, I get these DMs and these messages like, hey, I want to put a dormer on this house. What's it going to cost? I can't answer that question because I don't know what the heck is going on with your 60-year-old house. You can't assume that everything in your house right now is okay, because that's when you start having those nightmare scenarios with your contractors like you get $50,000, $100,000 cost overruns. But I dropped the camera in the sewer line, and I saw that the whole bottom of the sewer line was rotted out. These old cast iron or transite pipes, they rot out. So that was like a $5,000 phone call to my investor. But I've got two main investors, and then I've got some smaller guys like friends and family, people that I grew up with, college buddies, doctors and lawyers and such, that are not interested in doing
the dirty work.
Not only are they not interested in doing the dirty work, but they don't necessarily want $1 million project.
Right.
Like for example, my two good friends and my attorneys, I have their kids' college funds. $100K from each. We flip it each time. They make 10, 12%, 15%, and to them, it's a no-risk exercise because they've known me for 10 years.
Right.
For someone off the street that doesn't know me, this could happen, that could happen, the house could burn down, you could have $100,000 in cost overrun. So it's not for everyone, but how it works is basically we get a split that's determined beforehand, right? So like most of my guys is like 65-35 or 60-40, where let's say we lay out $700,000 on a job, our profit is 20%. Whatever that profit is after all our expenses, you're entitled to 65%. I'm entitled to 35%.
Gotcha.
And that's after your selling expense, your closing costs, your carrying costs, insurance, and so on and so forth.
Dude, I mean, we could go on forever. Just kind of, I guess, sort of sum things up. How many projects have you done? Like, how many homes have you built at this point?
I built about 20 homes at this point.
Jeez.
I'm doing... And it goes up.
And are these simultaneously happening? Like, do you have multiple projects going on at the same time?
Yeah. So right now I have 6. So that number 20 is gonna start to really go up. I'd say I'm in my low 20s right now. I really got to sit down and make that list again. But right now I'm running 6 jobs. One that's 100% done, that's ready to close. That's the North Belmore build. 2 that are 99% done, that are in the punch list phase, which I'm just wrapping up this week. And those are the ones that I really need to sell because I'm getting tight now, money-wise. And then I've got 3 right now that are going to bring me into 2020.
Gotcha.
One in Hicksville, one in Salisbury, which is that portion of Westbury that falls into East Meadow Schools, and one in Plainview. So I tried it now that the business has grown a little bit. I tried to get 2 to 3 at a time, so you get some synergy, get some good prices from the subcontractors. Right. When your framer knows he's got 3 jobs coming up, you can knock off like 5-10% off each job, and he'll know that one of his 3 framing crews is going to be with Shahzad for the next 2 months.
Right.
You know, but you know, now I'm reaching another problem. Okay, my we were talking about this before we started recording this podcast, and that is, you know, the same problem that any entrepreneur has. How could you possibly do everything yourself and still have quality of life and still have the ability to make time for brand development and for scale?
Totally, man.
You know, so, you know.
Yeah, that's the next stage. But that's a good problem to have, because that means you're doing things right.
It's a good problem. Know? It's a stressful problem.
Yeah, man.
I'm 7 days a week, 80 plus hours a week.
Dude, I hear you.
And you know, you sacrifice vacation time, you sacrifice family time, but the end goal is that you get it all back at some point, you know?
Yeah, you'll find, just knowing you a little bit better now, this is what happened to me. You kind of hit that point, and then you realize that that's not you, and then you dive back into working like crazy again, you know? Because
I could definitely see that happen.
It's hard to visualize that, but I can tell you that's been my own personal experience.
Yeah, you shared that with me when we first met. I found that very interesting.
Yeah, because you're a hustler, man. Where could people find you on social, man? Because they need to check your stuff out.
So Pinnacle Real Estate is my handle on Instagram, and it's youtube.com/Pinnacle Real Estate. I really need all of your help to get this YouTube thing going.
I implore you guys to check it out. These videos are amazing, man. They're really well done. And it really gives you a good insight into what it takes to build a house. And it's cool because like the people that are buying these houses, they can actually see A to Z, soup to nuts, how their house was built. I think that's the coolest thing about it, you know?
And so that's something that I found now is a very useful part of this vlog. It allows me to I can say to someone, look, nobody else in Plainview built a house with Zip System, and your house has Zip System. And how do you know that? Because from the day that I dug the hole until delivery, every step of this process is documented, and nobody else is doing this.
That's amazing, man.
And the reason nobody else is doing it is because you have nowhere to hide. Right. You know, anything that you do, when it's so well documented, will come back and bite you if you're not doing it the right way. So Pinnacle Real Estate, youtube.com/Pinnacle Real Estate. The vlog is a tremendous effort. It's something that I work on. You know, it's a weekly episode, 5 to 7 minutes, and I need some traction. So hopefully this will start
follow,
to pick up.
like, share, and subscribe.
Please, we need it. Yeah,
dude, this was awesome. I really appreciate you coming down, and
thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, this was. I'm really glad I got to know you better, man. This was really beautiful story, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. The audio for this podcast can be found on Apple's iTunes and SoundCloud. Let's get it.